Hi there, welcome to ProtoPie. My name's Darren, and in today's video we're going to be exploring some of the new features coming in ProtoPie 5.5, specifically around the playback response. And to explore these new features we're going to be building a video player. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's just go through our Pie file here. So I've got a group called player control, so this includes the track, the playhead, and this tooltip here, and also this gradient background that's just there so that when we show the controls we can see them over the top of the video. And then underneath we've just got this sample movie clip that I've recorded here to represent our fake movie. Okay, so just a little word about video players. So there's roughly two kinds of video players. There's streaming video players, so YouTube, BBC iPlayer. And the way those video players work in terms of when you're dragging the playhead here is normally the video will still continue to run while you're dragging, and then when you release it's going to then seek to the new time. As opposed to, say for example, Apple's video player, if you're playing a pre-recorded video that you might have on your phone, when you drag the playhead, the video will actually, the frame rate will actually move to match the playhead as well. And actually Apple TV's player, when you're watching a movie that you've downloaded from Apple, that also has a fast scrubbing kind of feature. So my prototype is going to be more like that. It's going to, because I just wanted to show you how you can connect the video to the playhead. You can of course make a prototype that mimics broadcast and streaming media, of course, where it's not going to be moving the video, but it just drops to the new time when you let go. So you'll have enough inside of this demo, this tutorial, to be able to build both. Okay, so just a word about that. Cool. Okay, so the first thing we're going to build is we're going to build the first starting sequence where the video is going to start playing and the controls are going to be visible by default, and then they're just going to fade out. Okay, so that's what we're going to build first. Cool, so we're going to come over to the interactions panel here, and we're going to add a start trigger. And to this start trigger, we're going to add an opacity response. And we're going to target the player control group. And this opacity we're going to set to 0 because we want our controls to fade out. But we don't want them to fade out immediately, so I'm just going to set a delay of 3 seconds. Okay, so let's have a quick preview of that and see what we've got. Okay, so you can see that we started. Let's just run that again. The video is starting to play, and then after 3 seconds, the controls are disappearing. Okay, probably a bit quick. Let's just fade that out, say over 1 second. See what that looks like. There you go, that's a bit softer. Cool. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to make the playhead here draggable. So we're going to come over to our interaction panel and we're going to add a drag trigger. And we want to actually target the playhead, which is this guy here. So find playhead. And to this drag trigger, we're going to add a move response. And we only want to move the playhead horizontally. So we're just going to choose the horizontal option here. And we also want to limit to the container. So we don't want to be able to drag this playhead outside of this container. We need to have a 0 position and the ending position, effectively the length of the track. Okay, so just make sure you choose that. Cool, so if we give that a quick preview, that's all we should need to do just to get the dragging working. So we can see we can now drag. Obviously our playhead's fading out, so we're gonna fix that. Let me just run that again. So you can see we can drag our playhead, but we can't get past the container there. Okay, let's close that down. Okay, so next up, we want to have a mechanism to actually re-show the player controls. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a tap trigger, and we're going to target our movie. We're going to add an opacity. And we want to target our player controls, so we want to fade these back in. So we're going to just turn that up to 100. and that's all we should need to do. So let's just, we might want to just, let's just make the duration 0.5, I think. And let's give that a test. So our controls fade out, and if we tap the video, they fade back in again. Cool. So now I can effectively show you how this is stuck. This is kind of stuck to the container as per what we did before, so you can't drag it out. Okay, so we now got our player controls up on screen. Let's close that down. Okay, so next up we want to make the playhead follow the movie's time code. So to do that, we're going to use a chain trigger. So come over to your interactions panel and add a chain. And we're going to target the movie. And we're going to use a new property as of 5.5, which is the time property. So we're going to chain to the movie's time. And inside of this chain, we're going to add a move response. We're going to target the playhead, because that's what we want to move. And then we get the familiar chain ranges. So what we want to do is we want to set the range, which is time, and to know what the time is, basically the length of the video, we can come over to our movie, and ProtoPie tells you here in the properties panel how long your movie is. So mine's 56.866 seconds, so I'm just going to round that up to 57. So come back to my move, and it's going to start at 0, obviously, and it's going to go to 57 seconds. And ProtoPie is just going to format that in a time code format. And then I want to now map my playhead position, so its starting position and its ending position. So I know already that my starting position is 4, and my ending position is 643. Okay, so that's on the X. Okay, so let's give that a preview, and hopefully we should see our playhead moving with the video. Cool, so now we can see our playhead is moving, it's tracking the video. That's all looking good. Okay, so let's close our preview window down. Okay, so next up, our next job is we're going to make the tooltip follow the playhead. So if we just look at the preview again, we can see our tooltips are like stuck here in the middle, and we want it to actually follow the tooltip. Sorry, we want it to follow the playhead as the playhead's moving along. Okay, so we're going to do that next. Okay, so to do that, we're going to add a detect trigger. And we're going to name this follow playhead. We're going to target the playhead's X property. That's already selected because, again, we had it already selected in the layers panel, but just make sure you've got the playhead and the X property selected. And to this detect, we're going to add a move. We're going to target the tooltip. So I'm going to search for it here, the tooltip container. And within the X value here, we're going to hit FX. We're going to write a formula in here, okay? And it's going to be quite a simple formula. So we're going to look for the playhead group again. So we're going to choose playhead group. We're going to type a dot, and we're going to want to use the X property. So playhead.x, and we're going to click OK. And I want to set the duration to 0 because I want the playhead to move instantly. Okay, cool. So that should be all we need to do. Let's just give that a preview. What we want to do first as well, I've just noticed we need to set the playhead to its correct, sorry, the tooltip to the correct position. So the same position as the playhead, so we just need to move that over. Let me just check the playhead position, which is going to be, let's just move this a bit. Okay, that looks good. Okay, let's now give that a test. Cool, so we can now see our tooltip is following the playhead, and that was achieved simply by using that very, very basic formula there. Cool. Okay, so that's that bit done. Moving on. So if we just have a quick preview of that again, you can see that the tooltip's moving, but the value is not changing. So we want this value to actually map to the value of the video. So we're going to do that next. Let's close this down. So we're going to add another detect. And we're going to target the movie. And again, we're going to target the movie's time property. And within this detect trigger, we're going to add a text response. And what we want to do is we want to target the tooltips text layer. So this text layer called time label here. It needs to be a native text layer, a native ProtoPie text layer, because we're actually going to be changing the text. Okay, so let's come back here and let's find time label. It's the only text label we've got in our Py file, so that's all that the ProtoPie will show us. And we're going to write another formula. So we're going to change content to formula. And this formula is going to be quite involved, but just follow along and we'll kind of explain it as we go along. So we're going to open some double quotes and I'm going to type 00 colon. And I'm going to close my double quotes. So this is just adding a little bit of text to the beginning of the time code. Okay, so we want it to start at 00. Okay, to that we're going to add, and we're going to add this other bit of the formula. So we're going to type lpad. Okay, I'm going to open our brackets and we're going to close them. Okay, we're going to, inside of this, we're going to add a floor. So this is a function that's going to round down our number. And let's just close that off. Actually, ProtoPie's already closed that off for me, which is quite handy. And inside of this, we're going to target, oops, not that one. We're going to target the movie. So we want the movie here. And we want to choose the movie's time property. Now, inside of formulas, it's actually called current time. And again, this is a new feature of ProtoPie 5.5. Okay. Outside of this bracket, so this is effectively the floor function here, but we're still in the middle of creating our lpad, and I'll explain what lpad is in a minute. So we're going to type a comma. We're going to type the number 2. We're going to type another comma. We're going to open some double quotes again, type a 0 and close some double quotes. And then finally, we're going to close our bracket. Okay, so you want to make sure, let me just delete that bracket for a second. You see these little red squiggly lines. So if you've got any red squiggly lines underneath any of this, it means you've typed it wrong. Okay, so this is obviously quite an involved formula. But effectively what we're doing here is to create our time code, we want to add a couple of zeros to the beginning. So that's this string part here. We then actually want to pad our number with another 0. So we want it to count up 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, etc. If we don't add the lpad, then it's just going to show us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's why we're using the lpad function. Then within the lpad function, we're using the floor function, and as I said previously, that's going to round down the current time to a whole number. And then within that, this is the part where we're actually getting the movie's current time from. We're using the movie layer and we're using the current time property to extract that value. Okay, so let's click OK on all of that. And what we're going to do next is we're going to preview that. Okay, so here you can see now, if I just tap on it again, we can see now that our tooltip timer is now counting up. It's now attached to the video and it's counting away the seconds. There you go. Pretty cool, eh? Okay, so let's close this down. Okay, moving on. So the next job that we've got is that we want to change the tooltip when the playhead is actually dragged. So this is the bit where we want to drag the playhead to a different position and we want to seek to a different part of the video. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a new trigger, and this is we're going to use touchdown. So we're going to use a mix of touchdown and touch up here. We're going to target the playhead. So let's just type that to search, Playhead, and we're going to create a variable. So we need to use a variable just to track whether the player controls are up or they're not. So come over to the variables panel, add a variable, and we're just going to call this overlay. Okay, so let's go back to our touchdown, and to this touchdown trigger we're going to add an assign response. We're going to target that overlay variable we just created, and we're going to set the formula to 1. So basically we want to write the number 1 to that variable. Okay, next up we're going to add a touch up trigger, and again we're going to target the playhead. So let's just type that in, and again we're going to add an assign response, target that overlay variable, and this time we're going to set the formula to 0. Okay, so we're just using this as a toggle to know when the overlay is on screen and when it's not on screen. Okay, let's go back to our follow playhead detects that we created earlier, and in here we're going to add in a condition, and we want to look to see when that variable overlay equals 1. So when it equals 1, we know that the player controls are going to be up. Okay, so within this condition we're going to add a playback response. We're going to target our movie, and we're going to select seek. Okay, so this is when we want to seek to a specific time. And again, this is a new feature of ProtoPie 5.5, so we can now seek to using a formula. So we're going to choose formulas from the drop down here. And inside our formula, we're going to open up our formula window and we're going to type another formula. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our playhead. And we're going to type a dot. So we want to affect the playhead's X property. And we're going to divide it by 670. I'll explain these numbers in a minute. And we're then going to multiply that by 57. Okay, so what we're doing here, so we're taking the playhead's X position, we're dividing that by the length of the track, okay, and then we're times multiplying that by the length of the video. So this is just a little formula to map the position of our playhead to the time position. Okay, so let's click OK, and then let's give this a preview. So it's going to fade, we're going to tap, and then we're going to grab this, and we can see now as we drag we're seeking the video. That's pretty awesome. Cool. Now obviously this was the part I was talking about earlier, where if you're prototyping something more like broadcast, then you probably wouldn't want to be doing this, and in that case you can just let the video continue to play, and when you touch up it will seek to the correct position. Cool. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, so next up we're going to build the part of the prototype which is going to stop the video playing while dragging the playhead. So this is obviously, whether you want to do this or not is dependent on what I've just said, whether you're building broadcast or not, but I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. Okay, so we're going to come to our touchdown trigger, and to it we're going to add a playback response. And we're going to target our movie. And we're going to set the action to pause, so we want to stop the video. We're going to go back to our touch up trigger. We're also going to add a playback. And this time we're going to set the action to play, and we need to choose our movie. Okay. Okay, so basically when we touch down, the video is going to pause, it's going to stop moving, and then when we touch up, it's going to continue moving. Okay, so we're going to tap on our video, and then as soon as we grab it, you can see now that if I hold here, you can see the video has paused. Okay, so now we're just tracking through the frames, and then when I let go, it's going to continue playing. Okay. Okay, moving on. So we're on the home stretch now, doing the final bit of interaction. I don't really want to see the end of the video yet. You know, it's kind of like a bit of a secret. But let's work on the last bit. So the controls fade away, and I tap it, and then they're up. But what if I don't do anything? They're just going to stay here. But I want them to go away. So I want them to fade away after I finished doing what I need to do. Okay, so to do that, we need to create a timer function, and we need to do some other formula stuff. So let's get cracking on that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to create another variable, and we're going to call this one timer. We're going to go to our tap trigger. Where is it? There. And to the tap trigger, we're going to add an assign response. And we're going to target that timer variable we just created. Okay, we're going to come into our formula window, and we're going to write a formula which is the timer. So the timer variable, we're going to choose that. I'm going to add 1 to it. Okay, so we're now going to check this repeat option, and we're also going to check infinite repeat, and we want to set the interval to 1 second. So this is effectively us creating a timer. Okay, pretty easy timer. Okay, next up we're going to go back to our touchdown trigger, just down here, and we're going to add a stop response here. We're going to target our timer variable. Okay, so that's going to basically stop the timer. So when we touch down, the timer will stop. Okay, we're going to add an assign response. Again, we're going to target the timer. And we're going to set the formula to 0. So we basically want to reset the timer. So imagine the timer's counting up 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever time we want it to count up to. But as soon as we stop the timer, we want it to reset. Otherwise, it's going to carry on counting from where we left off, and it's going to give us the wrong time. Okay. So next up, we want to go to touch up. So this touch up trigger here. We're going to add an assign response here as well. We're going to target our timer variable, and we're going to choose our timer variable again here, and again we want to add 1 to it. So we want to restart our timer. And again, we want to make this a timer, so we need to check repeat, make the interval 1, and check infinite repeat. Okay. Next up, we're going to add a detect trigger. We're also going to target our timer variable. And this is basically the part where we're going to create how long we want the timer to count up to until we disappear our player controls. Okay, so we're going to target our timer, and we're going to add a condition inside this detect trigger, and we're going to basically say, like, when the timer equals a number. So I'm going to choose 3 seconds. You can make it whatever you want. So when it equals 3, we want to stop the timer. So we target the timer variable there. We're going to add an opacity, target our player control, and we're going to set the opacity to 0. So we want it to fade out. And again, I want to make that a little bit longer. Let's make that 1 second. we're going to add an assign. Target timer. And we want to basically reset the timer back to 0. So we're going to, in fact, we don't even have to do that. We just need to assign 0 to the formula. Test it. I just want to show you how the timer's working. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to the timer variable here. I'm just going to turn on this little debug. So this little debug option allows you to see the value inside of the variable. So you'll be able to see the timer counting up. So let's preview. Okay, so we got the first part where our timeline fades out. You can see that nothing's going on with the timer here. So as soon as I tap, you'll see it starts counting up to 1, 2, and obviously it only gets to 3, and then it resets back to 0. So every time I tap it, my player controls come up, they hold for 3 seconds, and then they disappear. Okay, if I tap it and then hold down, now I can scrub my timeline. It's obviously interrupted the timer, so the timer's not going to carry on counting up while I've got my scrubbing going on, and then when I let go, again it's going to start counting, and then it's going to fade out. Okay, so this about wraps up our video player in ProtoPie 5.5. So you can see there's some really cool features that ProtoPie have added to 5.5 to allow you to create some video experiences. And I'm sure we'll be looking at some more videos in due course about how to use these features. But that's all for me for today. And you got to see the end of the video of R2 in my garden. So hope you liked the video. Hope it was useful. If you did, then please give it a like. And as I always say, if you want to hear more from me when I drop videos on the channel, then please do subscribe. That'll be really cool. And I'll see you next time.